Okay, welcome back. We are going to make sure we know how to approximate distances using a velocity function. So this is our part 1, our introduction to this, and hopefully by the time we're done parts 2 and 3, I think parts 1, 2, 3, that'll be it for this, okay? So here's our first example. Juan drove for 2 hours at 55 miles an hour, and then another 3 hours at 65 miles an hour. How many miles did Juan drive? This is a pre-algebra / algebra question. It shouldn't give you very much of a challenge whatsoever. You know that rate times time is equal to the distance. So we're going to take the first rate, which is 55 miles per hour. I'm going to write miles per hour as a fraction, miles per hour, times, how many hours did he drive that for? 2 hours. So I'm going to multiply by 2 hours. And if I multiply 55 times 2, of course, that's going to give me 110 what? Hours cancel with hours, miles is left over, so I just have 110 miles. That's kind of common sense. If you drive for 55 miles an hour for 2 hours, you'll get 55 miles in the first hour and 55 miles in the second hour, so it's a total of 110 miles in the 2 hours. But then we switch and we're going for 3 hours at 65. So now we have a new speed limit, obviously, of 65 miles per hour. And we're going to do that for 3 hours, so multiply that by 3 hours. Your hours cancel with your hours, and 65 miles times 3 gives me 195 miles. So, Juan spent 2 hours, and he covered a total distance of 110 miles, and then for the next 3 hours, he covered a total distance of 195 miles. Add this up, and this should give you 305 total miles that Juan drove. And you could divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to find his average rate of speed if you felt like it, which would be what, 61 miles an hour? Wouldn't be what you guessed though, would it? 61 is not exactly the midpoint between 55 and 65, but that's because Juan spent longer time driving at a faster speed, so it would be a little higher. Anyway, 305 miles is Juan's total distance that he ended up driving in that 5 hours. I want to give you just a graphic representation of this so you have an idea what's going on. I have a velocity graph here with respect to time over here, and I need at least 5 hours, so I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and who knows if I like that too much, but we're going to try and let it go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and who knows if he drove any further. I need 55 and 65, so here's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and this is miles per hour, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. So we have 2 hours at 55 miles an hour, consistently for 2 hours. I want to go a little higher than that, that's okay. Okay, and when we multiply base times height, our base is 2 hours, multiplied by our 55 miles per hour, and that gives us 110 miles right here. And then for the next 3 hours, so between the hours of 2 and 5 here, we're looking at 65 miles an hour. So the speed is definitely increased. And you take 65, which is the height of this rectangle, the height of this rectangle, and the base of the rectangle, which is a 3, so 3 times 65 is going to give me 195 miles here. We add 110 with 195, and that gives us 305. And this gives me the total distance that was covered. Using a graphic representation. Okay, so this total distance that Juan traveled in the first 2 hours represented by the area of this rectangle, and the total distance that Juan traveled in the last 3 hours is represented by the area of this rectangle. You add the areas together and you get the total distance. All right, that puts an end to part 1.